Welcome to the Tisch WNET studio here in the heart of New York City. I'm Steve Adubato, but way more important than that is our honor, our pleasure to introduce a real artist who been making a difference for a long time for a lot of people, Michael Imperioli. He's the author of a book called The Perfume Burned His Eyes. Won an Emmy, okay, with the cast of a little show called Sopranos. Like many others, by the way, people talk all day. In Goodfellas, the scene, I watched it 18 times just leading up to this. I won't make a big deal, I promise. Your Spider, Joe Pesci, who clearly is stable, did what he did, shot you in the foot, the whole thing. When that happens, and you're in that movie with those guys, this incredible cast, De Niro and Pesci and Ray Liotta and others, how old were you?
22. Oh.
Intimidating?
Oddly enough, it wasn't. My first experience behind the camera was a year before on another movie called Lean on Me, directed by John Avildsen, who did the first Rocky. That was way more intimidating.
By the way, who was the director of
Goodfellas? a guy, you might have heard of him, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, go ahead.
But the first movie, the director he was overwhelmed. There was like 1,000 kids in this auditorium, and it was, there were a lot of people in the scene, so I didn't really get a lot of attention, and he was rushed and under pressure. But Marty treated me like an actor, man, from day one, and was just very welcoming and introduced me to everyone and said, if you need anything, you come knock on my door on the trailer, and you got questions.
Wow.
I mean, he only knew me from the audition. He hadn't never seen anything I had done. I hardly had done anything at the time, but he just had so much respect. And so did the other actors. He treated me like an actor, which he didn't have to do. But I think that's what his genius is, because that's how you get a good performance. You make somebody feel comfortable. You make them feel relaxed, so they can open up and be creative and take chances, which is what you want to have.
That's real talent.
And he did that for me.
By the way, Michael wrote 5 episodes of The Sopranos. He's a writer. He's, as I said, an artist, a director. This book, The Perfume Burned My Eyes, set the scene for us. In 1970...
76.
Go ahead.
It's a 16-year-old boy named Matthew who lives in Jackson Heights, Queens. And in a 6-month period, he loses his father and his grandfather, his 2 main male role models. And his mother goes into a depression and inherits some money from the father that she didn't really know he had, because they were a very blue-collar, working-class family. And she just decides to move to the Upper East Side of Manhattan in kind of a doorman, fancy apartment building with this kid who suddenly is this fish out of water. And living in the building is the great Lou Reed, who is in kind of a crazy period of his life. He was doing a lot of amphetamines and staying up for days, but also very creative. It was a very creative period as well. And Lou and the kid strike up this friendship, basically, and almost becomes this replacement father figure for the kid as he navigates the totems of manhood that he encounters.
To be clear, you had a connection to Lou Reed
I did, yeah. I met him. We became friends in around 2000.
Okay.
I lived in the Village in my early 20s, and so did he. And I used to see him around. I was a big fan, but we didn't know each other. I mean, he didn't know who I was or anything, but. After The Sopranos hit, he was doing a concert, and I wound up going through his publicist and getting tickets. And after the show, the publicist said, "Lou wants to meet you," which I didn't even know he knew I was there. And he was great. He was kind and generous. He was a fan of what we were doing, and he made a big impact on me. So I'd started writing this book just about this 16-year-old kid. My son was 16 at the time, and I wanted to write about that. That frame of mind.
I have a 16-year-old right now.
Yeah, so it's a specific thing, and it's not about my son or anybody, but I wanted to write about that. 3 months after I started writing the book, Lou died. And that hit me as a fan and as an artist and as a friend, and somehow the idea came to put him into the story.
It's powerful. And it's interesting. It strikes me, and I could be wrong about this, Michael, that you are fascinated by people who, such a cliche, they move to their own beat. They have their own unique way of doing things, and they don't really care that much about what others think of them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Is that you?
Yeah, and being kind of an outsider, often just feeling.
Where'd you grow up, by the way? I'm sorry.
I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, and then in Brewster, New York for a couple of years, then in Mount Vernon again. But I really grew up here in Manhattan because I spent all of my time in Manhattan from the time I was 17. So this is kind of where I really learned everything.
But acting, music, because you
That all
play the
started,
guitar.
When I was a teenager.
So you're here in Manhattan at 17.
Yeah.
Are you saying to yourself, I'm going to be in the arts and
yeah.
That was it. And you knew that when?
17, yeah. I started taking acting class at Lee Strasberg on East 15th Street. And, when you start out as an actor, because that's really what my first focus was, you have to be really deluded about your own talent.
What does that mean?
You have to think your talent is so special that you're going to succeed in this business that's virtually impossible to succeed in. So you really do, because there's an enormous amount, for me and for a lot of my colleagues, an enormous amount of rejection in the beginning. I went on audition after audition that you got in the trade newspapers, which I don't even know if they have today, for plays that didn't pay any money, and you'd show up on a Saturday morning, there'd be 300 people there waiting to audition. And, I did that for a long time. And so you have to have a really kind of warped sense of your own worth and ability, because otherwise...
And a thick skin.
Very
incredibly thick.
Well, that's part of it. So the thick skin comes because you have to have a real strong belief in yourself.
Yeah. The other thing that's fascinating, and again, by the way, to promote, if you mind if we let people know the name of the book again?
Sure.
It is, in fact, Michael's book is called The Perfume Burned His Eyes.
That's from a Lou Reed lyric, actually.
Yeah.
The title, yeah.
And by the way, Joyce Carol says some great things about this. The reviews are super. Help me on this, Jen Eichlin, our executive producer. We've interviewed several of your former colleagues from The Sopranos. And one of the themes that kept coming out, and I don't know if I have this right or not, is that there was a real connection, personal, human connection. I don't know if it was the fact that disproportionate number of Italian Americans, similar backgrounds, but the way they talked about James Gandolfini was really special, and that he was a real key to that family, and that his loss was not just that we lost a colleague, we lost someone who was part of our family and friend. That's real?
Well, The Sopranos was very unique, and there were a couple of things that happened. A bunch of us knew each other from other projects. There was a lot of people who were in Goodfellas, who were in a lot of the Spike Lee movies, which I had done, several other plays and movies. I knew Edie, I knew Vinnie Pastore, I knew Tony Sirico, I know Johnny Ventimiglia, I knew Federico Castellucci. I knew a lot of these people.
Right.
So now we're all on this show, and it becomes a hit. So this, and a lot of us had been kind of in the trenches for many years, trying to climb the ladder of the show business or whatever. So now we all experience this hit together. I did not know Jim, and a lot of us didn't. But he was the central character. He worked more than any of the other actors, pretty much. And he was also like the captain of the team, He was like the Lou Gehrig or the Derek Jeter, and he looked out for everybody, both behind the camera.
And financially, I heard. Did he fight?
And financially, well, he was an extremely generous guy. He would find out about, like, some woman who's getting evicted or couldn't pay her mortgage, and he'd send someone over a check completely anonymously. And he saved a lot of people and helped a lot of people who probably to this day never know he did that.
Wow. And
strangers, he'd read stuff in the newspaper. And then he'd tell somebody, he'd write a check and he'd go, give this to this person, and it would be completely anonymous. He'd do a money order or whatever he did. And to this day, probably these people don't know that James Gandolfini paid off their mortgage or paid their rent or whatever he did. He did that a lot. And obviously, when you're doing stuff like that anonymously, there's humility that goes with that.
Before I do this mini-series that I'm watching with my wife right now that you're in, you play Governor Cuomo in a 3-part series. It's called...
7-part.
I'm sorry, we're on the third.
Dannemora.
I'm on the third part. That's in my head. Escape at Dannemora.
Directed by Ben Stiller,
Yeah. Being Christopher Moltisanti, how much of your life during that incredibly powerful, I can't imagine, period, were people not getting that this is Michael Imperioli.
I think that still happens.
Still.
Yeah, I think that still happens. I think, I think to a lot of people, when they saw The Sopranos, they kind of thought we were like Jersey Shore, like a reality show, like they found us in the mall or something. You know,
Not
they
a
didn't
group of
realize
artists.
that we had been doing this for many years, and we, you know, I think so. Part of that's maybe a testament to the authenticity of the show. Like people probably seem like they knew us, and I get that, both in the story and in the portrayals and in the locations, and they related, and especially here in the New York, New Jersey, you know, metro area, and among Italian Americans and stuff.
This 7-part series, Escape at Dannemora.
Yeah.
It's the prison escape. I don't want to give away too much. But you play Governor Cuomo.
Yeah.
By the way, why do you play? Governor Cuomo's he's legitimately involved in the real life situation. Right. You play him.
Right.
Is it filmed? Where's it filmed?
They
or we
filmed.
Can't not say that.
No, they filmed. I think they filmed in the yard at Dannemora,
Okay.
which was very tough to do, and they had some assistance, I guess, from the state government. But I think they built the stuff that I shot. They built the sets out in this California store in Queens, and then for other exterior parts, we shot at a prison down in Pittsburgh.
This is an interesting story.
But I got to hang with the governor. You know,
You did.
Spoke to him extensively about the prison break and why he did what he did and why it was important and what he was hoping to do as governor and to take care of this problem, because it's a very serious thing. You know, I mean, you know, prison break, prison uprisings, those are, you know, recipes for disaster. You know?
Michael, you were around Governor Cuomo a lot. Before I let you out of here, I'm curious. We do a little bit of politics, you know, talk a little bit about the
Which
political
kind of politics?
The politics of our culture today, political discourse. Are you intrigued by politics?
Of course.
Do you see yourself potentially, because I mean, people could become president who've done all kinds of things before they were president.
No, not.
Yes.
Absolutely no.
Zero, none.
No. I like what I do. I don't have the experience. I think people need experience to run for president. I think it's real, or run for office or stuff like that. I mean,
experience in
politics or in government or in law or something. I mean, I think just because you own buildings and are on TV doesn't qualify you at all. Which there's no better evidence than what's going on now. I mean, Jesus.
Thank you, Michael.
Cuomo's a lifer in politics and in government and stuff, and it shows.
And I wanted to say this, that when you watch our Open, you see Christopher Cuomo, who has been with us many times, and the late Governor Mario Cuomo. I will say this, it was 2000, it was literally 2000. It was by far the most compelling interview I've ever done, no disrespect to you or anyone else. The highlight of my career still.
Mario.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He was a great guy.
Best.
Great governor.
Michael, thank you.
Thank
you honor
you.
us here at Public
Fantastic.
Broadcasting, and thank you for all of your work and the work that you will continue to do.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Michael Imperioli in the house. This is One-on-One from the Tisch WNET studio here in the heart of Lincoln Center. Be right back.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Summit Medical Group, Georgian Court University, Choose New Jersey, New Jersey Sharing Network, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, NJM Insurance Group, and by New Jersey Resources. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.